start reading, if y'all would like to find a seat.
They're immersive literature.
They're immersive literature.
That'd be great. They would triple the attendance.
They can hear you. Yeah, I like. They can hear you anyway.
Well, welcome to Malvern Books. Thanks so much, y'all, for coming out. Pardon our desk. We are preparing for our annual clear the shelf sale, so it's a bit chaotic, but it'll be a lot of fun once we get started. We are super excited to welcome Martin Perlman, who is visiting us from out of town for his book launch. And without further ado, I'll introduce him. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Perlman has spent his adult life out west in California, Colorado, and Washington. Influences on his psyche include repeated viewings of Rocky and Bullwinkle, repeated listenings to Tom Lehrer and Firesign theater, and repeated readings of the collected works of James Thurber, J.G. Ballard, and Flann O'Brien. In an age of specialists, he considers himself to be one of the last generalists. He lives in Seattle, Washington with his wife Lane and daughter Lila. Martin.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's great to be here. It really is. Exciting for me. Loyal readers. I asked them, the brothers, if they would send a message back one last time for a first time. I had to cajole and wheedle and offer a box of the finest dark chocolates with absolutely no hard candy shell. And finally they agreed to one last first time. This gives me the chance to speak to you directly and to offer not exactly a warning, but at least a cautionary note as you venture deeper into this blog. Keep all your senses on alert. Maintain a healthy skepticism mixed with a touch of faith, and be willing to open your mind and your heart to what may seem like unrealities beyond our normal world. That's more than enough for now, or as Tiva would say, the fish do not wait. So back in 2010, 2011, I was a blogger and also a writer, and I would do social commentary, political satire, that sort of thing. One night in mid-August, in the evening, I used to write in the evening, I didn't really have an idea in mind for that day's posting, and a character entered my head. This character was named Isaac. Isaac was a blogger. Isaac was a burned out blogger. Isaac took control of my blog, which had been called Thinking Out Loud, and from that moment on, it became his blog, and it was called Thinks Out Loud. I was no longer the main character. Me, Martin, Isaac was in charge. Isaac had adventures. Isaac had interns come on and take part in the blogging. And from that point on, it was turning into a novel. So I did continue to publish these postings for a while. The tone was different because now it was a story. And after about 6 months, I decided that I was going to go dark. I no longer published my blog. What I did is I continued to publish my blog privately for myself as I continued to write the novel. But I told my readers I'll be back in a year and a half or so with a book that I hope you want to read, which is this one. So eventually I got to the end of the story, first draft you will, and at that point I then did all the things that writers do to turn their manuscripts into novels, which again was an interesting process. So what we have here now is an actual novel in blog form. It's all postings by different characters, and I'll just give you a little introduction today, read some sections just to sort of catch the flavor of this book. You can't actually see what I'm looking at, but if you were looking at the book, you would see at the top there's a blog headline posting. There's the text. At the bottom of that, there's a section for commenters, just as you would have in any blog. You have people making comments, and they come back. Some of them come back again and again and again. As you move through the novel, you get to know them too. So let's read just a few excerpts and see what you think. Thinks out loud. Humor me. Hey, look who reached magic 500. Entry number 500. Loyal readers, sorry about yesterday. My bad. Anyway, it's a special occasion for Thinks Out Loud. Who could have guessed 499 postings ago, 5 years ago, I would make it to this day? Little did I know when I started out with the original concept, Indo-European word roots in modern English, roar, tark, ben. This humble blog would evolve into a potent satirical take on current events, politics, and vitamin supplement recommendations. Or that I would have bunches of hits per day. Note to self, start limiting checking of analytics to twice a day. Remember posting number 227 when I'd gone off cold coffee, cold turkey? Goodbye lattes and all those misspellings, overuse of italics, wrong applications of the subjunctive, until I succumbed, yet again, to my caffeine habit. Or what about that anonymous commentator back in the early 300s who suggested I quit and become a roofer? I think not, and it's not because I'm afraid of slipping off a pitched A-frame. Or Philippa, who accused me of ripping off her blog as if I'd ever heard of Engage, exclamation point. Is it even still around? Then there was that unexpected threat of a lawsuit by a large technology firm whose name I can't mention for the settlement. Ah, the memories and the challenges of writing words worth reading. Stamina helps, plus having a good supply of refined carbs by your side. Lots of competing blogs have gone by the wayside, including mind games, just for fun, and island hopping. Why are people so fascinated by islands? They tried, but they lacked what I call true blogismo, an inner commitment to put blogging first and foremost on your to-do list. The question, naturally, is what comes next. Fortunately, there are always celebrities going off course, politicians lost in their verbiage, and corporations pretending they're people. Stay tuned. Isaac. View comments. Enabler. I liked his early stuff. Funnier. Gobbler. Thinks Out Loud may have peaked. You can always check out my blog, Catching Up. Etruscan. That's a hell of a lot of blogging. When do you have time for anything else? On another note, is it necessary to devote so much of your blog to satirizing bold startups and dynamic high-tech firms, including their CEOs? Aren't those the pinnacles of today's creativity, insight, and progress? I'm gonna do a big jump here. Isaac, the original blogger, has burned out. He's going on a sabbatical, and he promptly disappears. And one day he shows up on a deserted Polynesian island. And he spends some time there, surviving. And let's catch up with Isaac here. Castaway Diary. Visited. Entry number 545. On an early afternoon, I'm swimming, diving underwater, and skimming along the clear sandy bottom. Rainbow-hued fish keep me company. Like a porpoise, I breach the surface, and in the first second of water-filled eyes, see a blur heading directly at me. Time becomes scalloped. With a shake of my head, I clearly discern an outrigger canoe bearing down on me. Forceful paddles cut the water. I shout and dive at the same time. A shadow glides over me. Resurfacing, I see the wooden canoe turning, and men, a dozen or so, all pointing and shouting. Invaders! I submerge and swim as fast as I can above the sea's bottom, my heart heaving. I sense the craft gliding above me. I double back and try and get behind them. They seem to anticipate my every move. My lungs bursting, I'm forced to surface, the boat mere feet away. Sputtering, go away! I begin flailing my way toward shore. A wave carries me in like a toy. Exhausted, I try and run onto the beach as the canoe glides in on the surface with a majesty and poetry I can admire but not duplicate. Still breathing hard, I stand on the shore. Retreat would be pointless, since there's really nowhere to hide. Better to put forward a brave face and let fate carry me along. Having pulled their craft to shore, the paddlers nimbly jump out of their outrigger and stare at me as if I am an alien from an unknown land. I guess I am. Decorated with tattoos, some in straw hats and grass necklaces, they wear shorts with flowery patterns. They are muscular and sturdy. As they study me, I stare back, my jaw slack. My breath returning, I quickly invent a rudimentary kind of sign language. I try and convey to them how I had been lost at sea, reached the island on a raft, and survived by fishing and climbing coconut trees. When I began to illustrate my climbing method, crouching and pulling up, the men started laughing uproariously, gasping for breath. Two fell to the ground. Enough! Thunders a solid, broad-shouldered man, his feet planted solidly in the sand. We seek Isaac, the lost blogger. His unblinking eyes penetrate deep into my soul, while his raised eyebrows make a warmer connection. What? How? I mean, are you he? Yes, I stammer. The leader's wide smile is like an invitation. Then we have found you. His men murmur approval. How did you know I was here? The leader weighs my question before answering. He is in no hurry. We did not know for sure. This is the third island we have landed on, and this week you have kept us busy. But how did they know about me, my situation? I am confused. Ah, says the leader as he begins approaching me. He is just a touch gray-haired at the temples and has a broad, noble face. The straw hat fits him more like a Caesar's crown. Our search for you began when we received a message from your tall boy. I think my mouth fell open wider than for a teeth clean. To be continued. Comments. Blue baby. Pretty much in the nick of time. Gem. G-Y-M. This episode is actually raising true metaphysical questions. What is reality? What is Isaac's reality? What is my reality? Spec-Man. This is cool. I can see this as a movie. Kind of like Robinson Crusoe meets Nim's Island meets The Lost World. Maybe if the plot turns a certain way. Okay, so you have adventures taking place in the South Pacific. At the same time, there are parallel adventures taking place in Seattle. There's a group of bloggers who are helping out as interns. They have their own series of adventures taking place in the college/high-tech world. One of them gets hired to be a blogger at a very mysterious high-tech startup in what's called Pioneer Square. It's a downtown area of Seattle that's looks very old, but it's filled with a lot of new companies. Does that sound familiar? No. All right. So we're going to jump ahead again. If you buy and read the book, you can read what happens in between. This is entry number 569, Touring Alta Systemics. Eddie here. Eddie is a brother of one of the interns, okay? The intern is named Tallboy. He's now working at this mysterious company. Eddie is helping out because now Tallboy is busy being a blogger for the company. All right, here we go. Eddie here. With my brother's help, he hesitated at first until I reminded him it was my support that led to his taking the job. My history of high-tech class was invited to tour Alta Systemics, a seemingly innocent chance for students to get a first-hand look at a cutting-edge company. We had another motive. My insightful and cute classmate, Emily, had thought up the idea of the tour so she and I could try and find out what really went on at that mysterious company. A slightly distant Tallboy met us at the entrance of the building, its outer surface in that terracotta look that dominates Pioneer Square. Usually the nervous type, he was now radiating a pronounced calmness. Weird. I introduced my class and Professor Stevens to Alta Systemics Blogomite. What are you blogging about? Asked Professor Stevens as Tallboy ushered us into the vaulted ceiling reception area. Well, I just started, said my brother. So I'm working my way around the company and doing preliminary research, he said in a softer version of his usual talking pattern. I think my first blog will reference the great employees and their commitment to the Alta Systemics vision. Professor Stevens nodded slowly. I see, he said politely. A thin door seemed to materialize right out of the wall, and a tall, young, engaging man walked toward us. I noticed Emily studying him. Hi, he said, I'm Ted, an Alta Systemics connector. It will be my pleasure to show you around the hive today. He pointed upward to show the upper floor's honeycomb design that stretched skyward from the lobby. He also was too damn calm. After we put on our VIP buttons, visitor in person, said Ted, he asked us to follow him into a bronze-plated elevator. As we were herded in, Emily whispered to me, when I flirt, do your independent research. I opened my palms outward and silently mouthed, what? As the elevator door closed, we went up a couple of floors. As we followed Ted around, it was hard to tell when we were in hallways, large rooms, or connecting rooms, hence the term hive for their environment. As we passed white-robed employees walking en route to meetings or whatnot, Ted would say, hi, Shanti, hello, Rahul, and they'd softly hello back. Everyone was calm, very calm. With what seemed like a well-practiced commentary, Ted pointed out the Hive Alive room for meetings and presentations, the bibliothèque, resource library, without any books, and the honey room, or cafeteria. It all seemed fairly predictable for a high-tech, non-traditional company. Emily practically hugged Ted's outside throughout. The other students were making comments and going, wow, and looking left and right. I was watching Emily and Ted. Let's meet a hiver, said Ted. At Alta Systemics, we believe in mind power. I was wondering where Tallboy had gone off to. Ted knocked twice at a non-door door, only a thin outline indicating a break in the pale blue wall. He paused and knocked again. The door slid open into a wall and opened. Patricia, we've got visitors. On a white cushion on a white floor in a spacious cubicle of a room with white walls and a large gossamer thin curtain, floor to ceiling, there, dressed in a hooded white robe, was a figure head down. Slowly, the head came up and revealed a dark-eyed woman with a serene expression, a hint of a smile. Welcome to the hive, she said in a low voice, almost a whisper. I couldn't place her accent. I also couldn't tell if she was on some sort of break or actually working. Patricia is one of our intuitives or sensate projectors, said Ted, as if we all knew what that meant. Emily leaned even closer to him. Excuse me, Ted, she began. Sometimes when one is deeply involved in a particular field, he or she starts to take for granted certain phrasings and meanings inherent in that sphere. It's called curse of knowledge. Ted seemed mesmerized by Emily. With her playful eyes and raised eyebrows momentarily darting my way, Emily, I think, wanted me to do something. She continued, could you tell us a little more about Patricia and what the others do? She tilted her head again. Ted, calm as he was, puffed up a bit. Sure. Emily bounced an elbow out of Ted's line of sight to indicate to me that I should do something. What? And I got it. Initiate my independent research. As Ted talked about alternative dimensional interstices, I slowly backed away from the group. Watch it, said Alex. I'm sorry, I responded. At the door, I eased out and acted like I was looking at my phone messages. I returned to the elevator, stared at the choices, and pressed the button D+. I already had my excuse if I were caught just looking for the bathroom. Down I went, and down and down. Was I below ground? I exited and took a right. Indistinct lighting in the hallway emanated from the walls. A soft vibration, almost a hum, was a constant. I increased my pace. The hallway seemed to have no end or junction. About to turn back, I literally bumped into a wall, the end, so subtle in shading, I couldn't tell space from solid. But my bumping caused that section to vibrate and slide open to reveal a room with a much harsher lighting, currents of cold air, and deep pulsating sounds. I squinted and had put my hands up in front of my face to block the intense light when a body from behind me shoved me into the room. Just looking for the bathroom, I stuttered as I sheepishly turned around to face Tallboy. My brother looked both surprised and concerned. Eddie, what are you doing here? Why aren't you with the tour? I didn't know where to start. Comments. Distant. Will Tallboy help Eddie or turn him in? Etruscan. Quite a company, talented team, great concept. Fixture. I worked for a high-tech startup in the late 90s, also in Pioneer Square. Their product was called a U-Pod, and it was going to revolutionize the internet by providing a handheld, non-computer access model. Sound familiar? Trouble was the technology hadn't caught up with their idea. We showed up for work one day and our computers were locked up, and an hour later we were in a group room and were told the money had dried up, thank you for your service. My take, years later, a dead-end branch of the tablet evolutionary tree. This does go on. It develops further and further. I'm happy to pause, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to talk. Do you feel like you have a little bit of sense of the book? Bloggers, mystery, adventure and romance in Polynesia? Yes.
Is Etruscan the CEO of Alta Systemics?
I don't know if it's fair to answer that question or not. So Etruscan has been a commentator several times already in portions that I read. And there is a mysterious CEO that runs Alta Systemics. Now, is it possible that that mysterious CEO is using that name, Etruscan, to somehow interfere with what's going on in the blog, especially as the students get more involved in finding out what he's doing. I'll leave that to you to decide. Good question. Yes?
Earlier before the reading, we were talking about epistolary novels, and I was wondering if you did any research or found any other non-traditional narrative styles that inspired sort of the blog format.
Yes, that's an excellent question. So this is referencing epistolary novels, which were some of the very first novels in English. I'm an English major. Epistolary novels were some of the very first novels in English literature in the 1700s. And literally what you found out about whatever plot was happening were what you read in the letters that people were writing back and forth to each other. And yes, I was aware that while I was doing this, especially in the later stages, everything in this blog that you learn about comes from a posting that someone is writing. And it is, in many ways, a modern equivalent to that great tradition. The twist on it is that in our times, because blogs allow for interaction among the readers, you have that added facet to it. So it's like an updated epistolary novel. It's great to know that there's this fine tradition that's resurfacing here. So yeah, I was aware of it, and thank you. Good question. Here's your chance. Anything else you want to know?
Did you enjoy writing the book?
I did enjoy writing this book. Seriously, this book started out not as a book. It started out with me blogging, and then it changed over to the novel when this character literally took over my head and my consciousness. And my wife tells me, because I used to write in the late evening, that she would often hear me laughing as I'm doing my latest posting. So I think that's pretty evident that yes, I really enjoyed writing this book. And what brings it full circle, of course, is when others get to read it too. Now, I find many sections of it funny and humorous. Each reader has his or her own experience, so that'll be interesting to see. Early readers, this book is just now out. Early readers have said that they are finding it entertaining and funny, and every once in a while serious.
This is your first novel? Or?
This is my first novel. There's an unfinished novel that's in a drawer. I've published some short stories along the way and humor pieces. I also did for years a number of nonfiction writing, profiles, interviews, that kind of thing. And I was always intimidated by the idea of the novel because it's a novel. In this case, I approached it piece by piece, bit by bit. I made a discovery that if you're willing to find some time, 3, 4, 5 days a week in 30, 40-minute little segments, if you do that for a year, you will have a rough draft. So that was my major discovery, that in addition to my family life and other, I work at a university. In addition to that, I could actually write a novel by doing that. That was my big discovery.
I was just going to say the follow-up question was, what are you working on now? What's your next project?
Okay, this is interesting because modern independent authors need to market their book. Hi, buy this book. And I'm doing that right now. At the same time, my mind is working on a second novel. It's not going to be in blog form, but I have an idea that I want to do, and I'm itching to do it. I'm writing up notes as they occur to me. But for the next several months at least, I do plan to spend my time with Thinks Out Loud. Good company, don't mind doing that. That's part of the challenge, I think, of modern writers is you write, you publish, you promote, and then you want to get at it again. So I am going to continue. I have my second idea. It's developing. It's underway. Yes?
What attitude should readers approach this book with?
What attitude should readers approach this book with? I think any attitude that you have is the way you should approach this book. I don't know if I broke a lot of novel laws in this one, but I have multiple characters that you're going to identify with. I have a playful plot that has both some sci-fi accents to it, but also has adventure and romance within it. I don't know if there's a term for postmodern, modern, but some people might find some of that self-consciousness in it. It's playful. If you're willing to go along for the ride, you'll have a good time. I'm not trying to write the world's deepest novel by any stretch of the imagination, but every once in a while people find themes embedded in here that I go, yeah, oh, that's interesting. It's very interesting. When you're an author, people bring their own experiences to the reading, and their interpretations and their feedback are very, very interesting. That's what I like about poetry and novels, is that there's multiple interpretations available. There's not just one line of thought with this or any book. So in answer to your question, I think almost anyone who likes to read could enjoy this book. Does that sound like a marketing plug? Oh, well. Yes?
Did you find yourself focusing more on the form or the plot when you're writing?
This is an interesting question too, form versus plot. So I'm working in a very definite form of blog postings. I have to be very aware that I'm writing a posting that's almost like a chapter, but not quite like a chapter. And then at the same time, traditionally you have plot, characters, setting, all of those things that we think of that make up most novels, unless it's a very inward, self-reflective novel, but even those have that aspect. So the more I wrote, the more that the plot and the setting and the characters came to dominate. I got used to writing in the posting form, but it really became a novel in my mind. It really started to have all those aspects, and I think that's an advantage. Otherwise, I think I would have ended up with a rather boring book about blogging, and I didn't want it to be that. As you know, authors often say characters take on a life of their own, and these characters start to show you where they're going. I definitely had a loose sense of where I wanted the plot to go, but I didn't actually know how it was going to end. And that was part of the fun, to be exploring that. And again, the plot deepened, the characters came out and imagined themselves into being. The settings became very important. Seattle, a high-tech world, versus Tiari, an island in Polynesia, two very, very different areas. So all of those parts through postings, but they did come to dominate.
Would you say the form then was like a constraint? Having the blogging form, was that a constraint, or did it add kind of freedom to let things develop more organically?
So that's a good question too. If you're writing in postings that tend to be self-contained, can that become a form of containment when you're trying to write a book that's full of life and the adventure and all of that? I think it might be like playing tennis with having a net versus playing tennis without a net. Having that posting form created for me a sense of I have to have something happen in each posting to keep it interesting. So in some ways, it became a challenge to make each posting in its own way. If you just pick it up at random, there's going to be something in that posting that's interesting, even if you don't know the full story. So a restriction can be a form of challenge, but also of potential development that you would not normally come across. That's an excellent question.
Do you have to read the book from beginning to end, or could you jump around, like you said?
So could you approach this book by jumping around, or should you start at the beginning and go to the end? I would start at the beginning, because when you start at the beginning, you have a character that's still doing regular postings, but it's getting a little more burned out. And then you see there's a reason why that person disappears and why interns come on board. And that sets the stage for when the interns are going to start having their adventures at that mysterious high-tech company. And at the same time, you'll understand why the original blogger, who's in Polynesia, is also on his search for identity and development of who he is. So I would recommend start at the beginning, work your way through it. These have been great questions. I love this part of the readings. And thank you. Thank you very much for coming today and being a part of this.